All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have both Dr. JJ Hurtak and Dr. Desiree Hurtak here with me on the show. And both are composers, social scientists, futurists who have authored numerous books together, as well as founders of the Academy for Future Science. Hello, Desiree. Hello, JJ. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Thank you, Brandon. We're happy to be aboard.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I mean, you started rattling off. Can I talk about this? Can I talk about this? And I'm like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And they're all such interesting topics. So,
we were saying that our most recent book, which is available on Amazon as well as from our website, is Sound. And it not only has us in it, but it has Steve Halpern and some other people. One of the people is Beth Green. And when she was ill most of her life, and then her husband started going into dementia. And they even had, all the medical statistics of how much dementia he had. And she got this inspiration to simply get an acoustic piano and to start playing. And the way she plays, and she's available, I think it's bethgreen.com, and she's on YouTube and other things. She's actually brought her husband out of dementia. So the more we, look at all this, and that's why we talked about sound, we're just vibratory.
We did the original research of sound vibrations in the Great Pyramid. And I brought together for your audience this magnificent picture of golden light inside the ascending chamber. It's also called the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, where we did musical orchestrations in the 1990s. And using ancient mantrams, the Hebrew and the Egyptian, we suddenly reached a point of vibration where a standing column or wave was excited. The frequencies allow this frequency synthesis to literally light up the interior of the pyramid. It scared the guards. But again, this is the essence of our new book. Sound, particularly we would call acoustical physics, is connected with every aspect of life. And if we have the right intention, the right musical wisdom, the right vibration of our heart, mind, and spirit, we can open doorways to the past as well as to the future.
But these frequencies are also like healing frequencies. Ultrasound, and the word is sound, even though you don't hear it. Sound is not always what we hear, but there's still these frequencies, is being used for many, many, many things, and even as a healing technique. And, Royal Raymond Rife years ago was looking for like that one frequency to cure this, that, and the other. Now they're coming up with the fact it's really a collection of frequencies. And certain things have been approved by the FDA, from like Novo Cure is a company that puts out several frequencies at once to stop glioblastoma from cell dividing, which is a cancer that, is stopping. So we're all these frequencies, and we start the book with plants because we've worked with Damenhor, and they have this device where you hook them up to plants, and our
Germany?
friends
Damenhorst in Germany? Italy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We worked with Marcel Vogel at IBM years ago, back in the 70s, who was then working with Chris Bird, who wrote this famous book, The Secret Life of Plants, which changed the whole direction of scientists behind the scenes, even in the military intelligence. They realized plants can communicate. We just don't understand the complexity of vibration, but now we do. We've had tremendous breakthroughs in all areas of science with the Mozart effect, with our friends and colleagues in all major countries using music to raise consciousness. So that's the springboard, and that's the clue to the context story with extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial intelligence. They work through musical vibrations, as we saw at the end of the Steven Spielberg film called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All of the NASA scientists were there with supercomputers pulsating certain sounds to see which frequency would be picked up by the alien mothership. In essence, we cover all basic areas of physics, cosmology, linguistics, and sound communication, which we hope will give us a cipher for the next phase of contact with the higher intelligence.
Well, you guys dove right in the deep into the pool. I absolutely love it. And if we could back up a little bit, I'd love to get a little bit of backstory and just share whatever feels relevant to share with the audience. So for those who are, brand new to you two and your work, and, just whatever feels relevant to share to kind of give us some context.
Well, in 1973, Dr. Hurtak had a unique experience where he was literally taken into a pillar of light connected with the power of the patriarch Enoch. and he saw things past, present, and future. And one of the things in the Keys of Enoch, and that's our main website, keysofenoch.org, and also Keys of Enoch TV on YouTube, is that he basically said that our sun is a variable star, and Goddard, and that was in the 70s, right? Goddard, NASA's
Space Flight Center
actually came out with those exact words around the year 2000. In addition to that, he said, well, the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid points towards Orion, and he said why it does. And, of course, this has been popularized since that point. And there's many other things. I mean, obviously, previous civilizations, which we're all used to right now, going back, into all the different changes that this planet has gone through.
So in essence, I was shown a blueprint of how science, spirituality, medicine, and music all converge with the 7 chakras or energy points of our body. And if we do this properly and use what I call a synthetic symphonic energy field of music and sound, we can balance the inconsistencies between one part of the brain that is scientific and one part that is spiritual. Bring the two together and, should we say, initiate a whole new learning curve of why our friends in other regions of space are beginning to communicate with us through these very specific musical signals.
Wow.
So Desiree and I worked behind the scenes with leading musicians from Carlos Santana to Ellis Coltrane. We've worked in major countries with pyramids, with ancient temples, and we have permission to use very advanced technology to measure the acoustical frequencies that open the heart and mind to higher states of consciousness, which is the hidden side of why music is so important in the history of humanity.
Wow, that's fascinating. It makes me think of if you're familiar with Return of the Bird Tribes. Are you familiar with this book, which is channeled text by Ken Carey, and it talks about.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and it talks about how music will be sort of the medicine that helps to unlock and ascend humanity in the coming ages. And I think it was actually written in the 70s or 80s. It's funny that 73 was your experience. I just had Bashar on, speaking of extraterrestrials, etc. I just had Daryl Anka, who channels the entity known as Bashar, on the show, and his experience was 1973. I recall, because it was just last week or so.
We both have a mutual friend in Ellen Steinfeld, leading New York journalist who knows Daryl quite well. And Alan has come out with a new book called Making Contact. And in that book, we write a chapter explaining our research with cosmic intelligence, what we are doing behind the scenes with leading scientists and researchers, and also the importance of young people not giving up, but realizing there's hope on the horizon, that we are at a situation of negativity through media and through what I will call the disregard for the spiritual higher octave that we can reach for and use productively like our ancestors, particularly during the time of the Italian Renaissance and even in ancient times of Near Eastern culture. So we're at a bridge of either jumping forwards or backwards into a culture of death and violence, if we simply go with heavy metal, forward in terms of the higher frequencies of acoustics and acoustical engineering, to a medicine of light, renewal, repurposing, and as Desiree said, with new medicine of Novacure, how we can actually cure brain cancer. Some of these situations are just unbelievable that we can handle if we think positive.
Well, one of the things we mentioned in Alan Steinfeld's book, Making Contact, is the fact of that we believe there's 3 levels of intelligence. I mean, we're part of the extraterrestrial level of intelligence. That means we live on this planet, but we will soon, and we believe that, be off of this planet. Extraterrestrials usually operate in the 5th, 4th, and 3rd dimension. Right now, we're just in the 3rd/4th dimension, but we'll get there with our mental capacity. We have that ability. And then there's what we would call extra celestial levels of intelligence. Our associate Mark Sims talks about a celestial being that came to him in his bedroom and told him all about, the past of this planet and why we're here and things like that. Those are usually beings, in our opinion, that's local beings, some of which have incarnated here, but then decided to stay around and help humanity. But they don't manifest. They don't fly in flying saucers anymore. They don't need that to travel.
And on the upper end of the musical scale, or the piano, there's what we call the avatars, the great teachers, the great thinkers. We will call them the alter celestials. This is a key
ultra terrestrials.
Key word that is, yes, interchangeable with the concept of those who are completely in the non-physical dimension, but they show themselves in bodies of light. And I brought a picture with me of one of my experiences in the year 2000. I was in Mexico praying and singing using the ancient mantras.
Wow.
I used the
Wow.
biblical Hebrew along with the Aramaic, along with the Greek language. And at a unique point by the pyramids of Tulum, this light manifested on my body briefly.
Wow. Can you move it over just a little bit towards your face? There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
need
those
a
of you
picture.
who are listening to this, if you go to the YouTube channel, you can see the video of this. Wow. That's really cool.
So this is just one of many situations why I'm working really on a very advanced level with those who have taken the time in the learning curve to get their background in physics, in cosmology, in musicology, because this is the breakthrough. This is not kid stuff. This is not make-believe. This is the real story that we're being prepared for cosmic contact through what is called the disclosure program by the American government and by other governments of the world who know we cannot ignore what's on our doorstep.
Yeah.
What is on our doorstep is a wide variety of life forms who are concerned about our misuse of weapons of mass destruction. The reality of placing these weapons in space would lead to biospheric collapse and the end of civilization as we know it. So we've got to encourage people. How can we do this? Not by giving them a whole bunch of books, but giving them music, giving them a harmonica, giving them a guitar, and letting them feel the high vibration of their higher self or the overself.
And also sing and dance together, because music is the one thing that really crosses all cultural
It tunes us into dolphins. It tunes us into whales. We've had colleagues in South America who study the heartbeat of the whale and have actually attuned the musical
pacemaker, actually.
Information into a new type of pacemaker. So Mother Nature teaches us from all directions that everything is vibrations.
It's interesting. I remember a story. I went to a music festival, transformational festival years back. And this woman gave a workshop about her healing. My partner was at and shared the story with me. She had some kind of really severe injury, and she was shown in a meditation or something. I can't remember the exact details, to go to this particular place at this particular time and swim, and a whale would show up and emit tones that would heal you. And she did it. She followed the, guidance, and a whale showed up and it emitted these tones and she was healed.
Wow. Yeah, that's very profound, but that's exactly what we're talking about, because really all life is vibration. I mean, even down to the very, atomic structure, it's vibrating, it's resonating.
Yeah, right.
And if we can just simply align with that and shift it in where it needs to be shifted, we're able to be healed. And plants talk to us as well. We were saying about Damen, who are friends of ours. They go to these arboretums, and they hook up like 5 or 10 musical instruments to the plants, and they just let the plants do the concert,
Yeah.
Each one sings different, but they sing loud and clear.
So, Brandon, we've come out with a whole new series of musical albums. And Desiree has just mentioned one that is associated with Bradley Pitt and Darren Curtis in Australia that deals with this super sensitive music of the plants. We highly recommend it by going to our website, keysofenoch.org. We've worked over many decades, in fact, 50 years with Stephen Halpern. We've just come out with an album with him called
Steve Halpern's great.
Sacred Ciphers of the Divine Mother, which shows really the energies of the divine feminine, or the compassionate side of the human psyche, from 9 different cultures of the world. We highly recommend this. And of course, years ago, we came out with this album, Sacred Name, Sacred Code, that deals with the ancient prophetic use of language for healing and for miracle working that has been used throughout the world with great success. So we've got a whole plethora of a music library we like to make available to those who are tuning into you.
Well, one of the important things I think people need to know about music is also geometry, and oftentimes sacred geometry. So even in our sound book, we have this small section from Darren Curtis, who's one of the contributors, and he's showing actually on this side 38 hertz, and on the other side 64 hertz. And it comes from cymatics, which is the Hans Jenny work, and in actuality it's older than Hans Jenny.
It shows how sound produces mandalas, or sacred geometries. And the study of these geometries through biofeedback can help initiate you into different states of awareness, different states of healing, and also we believe in mind over matter signals. So that's been part of our journey to bring out the musical, acoustical side of ancient science and modern science called the medicine of light. Now, if we have, again, an opportunity to go back to the keys of Enoch, we see this bird, which is a dove, and 7 rays of light representing energies coming from the higher source upon the 7 chakras. Different levels of energy research have taken us into various fields with ancient sites, as well as other situations of what we would call extraterrestrial contact.
Right. So I know this is mostly a radio show, but I'll just say that Dr. Hurtak talked often in the keys about the grid points of the planet. Again, this is back in the 70s when this was published. So you see that the whole planet is a sacred grid of energy. It's a frequency vibration. And again, not just one frequency, multiple frequencies. And that's how it all works.
So one area mentioned in that map that Desiree showed was the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. And there in 2004, we had this remarkable event. I'm going to show this for those who can see this visually.
Otherwise, look for Campeche on Google. And
those
this
UFOs I'm seeing?
Yeah. This is where the Mexican Air Force, they were looking for drug runners. So they fly in this area, especially the Gulf of Mexico, all the time. And in 2004, which is the same year as the Nimitz experience, I'm sure you've talked about that on your program, but we can cover it as well. Anyway, that they saw as many as 13 vehicles captured in one frame of their LiDAR images. So they knew where it was. It's been poo-pooed, or whatever you call it, just, put down, saying that it's simply oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, but in actuality,
with the burn off of the oil rigs.
But in actuality, these guys are, Mexican Air Force. They fly there every day. They know exactly what's on the ground and what's not. So that was a really interesting case. And then shortly thereafter was the Nimitz case out of, off the coast of California, Southern California.
Brandon, what is interesting, those little dots that you just saw.
Yeah.
Each is as large as a 25-story building.
That's what they imagine, that they're really huge spacecraft. They're not little.
So we try to get this released worldwide, but we were prohibited because the powers that be told the Mexican authorities this would cause too much culture shock. But nonetheless, we did get these postings that went out to Europe on German television, and certainly through Jaime Maussan, the great journalist in Mexico City, all around Latin America. So again, this is a small illustration of what disclosure is all about. Spaceships from other civilization are at a doorstep. We seem to lack the courage to put all of this information together and saying, well, folks, it's time that realize that we have to have scientific input from other levels of cosmic universal intelligence. So this is the importance of your program, that you're bringing together viewers who are looking at the other areas of borderline science, new directions of where we go with the powers of consciousness. And also you have the courage to realize that the other cultures, the indigenous of North America, the Hopi, the Navajo, all of these smaller cultures also have their story to say, dealing with the cosmic others.
And bottom line, we're not alone.
Yeah. It's been fascinating to see all of a sudden in the last year, especially how much it's on the news every day, like the very mainstream television. And it's like, okay, they're trying to tell us a vision now about UFOs being real, UAPs being real, and these beings being real. I'm curious what you think. Some people, of course, think that's sort of they're going to do false flag, sort of, we're under attack or something. It's like if it's coming from the mainstream media, we're suspect, and for good reason. I'm curious what you think is going on there.
Well, it's been really exciting, though, of course, to have ARROW, which is that anomalous resolution office, to start making public, we'll say, media announcements about what they're doing and hearings. And that is behind that is Gillibrand, from a Democrat from New York, and Sean Kilpatrick. He's kind of on the other side of the fence.
With the Department of Defense and all of these fancy name groups.
But in addition to that, you have now NASA. And just this morning, it was kind of interesting.
July 6th.
Yeah, NASA and we'll say ARROW got together in a public hearing and talked. Of course, they're not saying anything yet because nothing is coming out. And that was the problem that the day after our Contact in the Desert, which I'll give a plug for that great conference that's been going on as annually as they can, and starting once again up this year in the desert of Indian Wells in that area. Anyway, the Monday, which still had a lot of workshops going on, is when Grush gave his announcement to the press. And I think some people have seen that on News Nation. And he's a 36-year-old high I'll say, U.S. intelligence clearance levels. And he's worked in Afghanistan, and he was a member of the UAP Task Force. Have you covered this a little bit, Brandon?
No, we really haven't covered it on the show.
No. Well, that was June 5th, so everyone can go look that up. And what he said, the headline is that we have vehicles, or we have material from downed craft of non-human origin. He used the word non-human origin. Now, the reason he came out with this is unlike Elizondo, who came out in
Luis Elizondo,
who came out in 2017. That was like a news release to tell the people, hey, this is what's going on. Actually, Grush had been trying to get this through the Congress, get this to the task forces, get this to Arrow. And every time he tried to get the information to them, and he was a member of the UAP task force, they told him, sorry, kid, we're not giving our information even to the UAP task force that was assigned by the Senate and the House of Representatives. So he's going, well, this is ridiculous. We're supposed to be having this information. So he started doing writing letters and doing formal inquiries and, whatever, going before, I think the attorney general or whatever he had to do, and nothing was happening. He's saying, he's a whistleblower, what they call a whistleblower, which means he knows about this information. Not that he's seen it, but he knows about it from high levels, and yet he could not get that released. So now we believe in the near future, and we're hoping even this year, but maybe in the next few years, not only whistleblowers like him who know about it, but actually witnesses will come forward, because there's been a lot of witnesses, even those who were with the Nimitz.
Even today in the congressional hearings, the NASA hearings, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick mentioned that the events have speeded up of sightings from 600 to over 800 just today. So we know that the world is being bombarded by all sorts of paraphysical phenomena. So what is the selective factor that one uses? One has to go to the sources, of course, with the military chain of command, government people who are sensitive, the right clearances, the right investigators, et cetera, et cetera. But Desiree and I feel this is all behind time, because we have worked with the indigenous elders in Brazil and Africa who have actually seen the vehicles face to face. We have talked with school children who have seen spaceships hover over their playgrounds in South Africa.
In Africa, where they were all all spoken to telepathically by the beings.
And I was there in Brazil with the Varginha event in 1996, where aliens came down and began to run through this industrial community called Varginha. All of this was covered up. So essentially, we are getting to the point of putting all of these pieces together out of cosmic frustration, but also out of a higher harmonic, that people are mature enough in the age of Steven Spielberg to see the musical side of life, that we all share a common musicology of vibration.
But let me say what really has held up our government. I do think there's a cover up on 3 levels, but I'll just talk about one of them. For the witnesses to come forward, they have almost all signed NDA, non-disclosure agreements. And that means if they break that, they can go to jail, they can lose their jobs, they can lose their pensions. So it's basically, they're wiped out, right? So unless, and this is what Gillibrand and others are trying, Marco Rubio is another one who's trying to help here. And a guy named Burchett out of Tennessee as well. Marco Rubio's out of Florida. They're trying to allow these people to come forward without losing that, to keep them safe, to be able to broadcast what they actually had seen. And, when you get down to the fact that they've seen, what Grush was saying was that it was not only pieces of fragments of UFOs, but actually whole UFOs. And we worked a little bit with Dan Bursch, who supposedly worked at Area 51.
And a microbiologist who actually saw the bodies.
Yeah, we believe he did. And we believe Bob Lazar is accurate about it, that we've back engineered some of the technology, but what we're seeing now, some of it could be, we'll say, human-made vehicles. But when you go back to 51, where we knew astronaut Gordon Cooper, he saw a whole flotilla of UFOs, and he said the Russians did too when he was flying on the border of the east-west Germany, and he knew how high our planes could get in 51, and he
so
said,
what do they do?
Not us.
They put him in the crazy house? No, they made him an astronaut. So fasten your seatbelts, Brandon. I know Desiree is like a machine gun when she gets going. We want the people to know they can be safe, they can be balanced, they can understand the positive side of the story. Because we work with the top people in Brazil, in South Africa, and Australia, involved with the traditional indigenous communities. We've worked with several of the astronauts like Gordon Cooper, and he writes in his book, Leap of Faith, that there's a whole new frontier. And there's a courage that we must have to accept those that do not look like us, but are part of a whole greater story of creation.
Right. And we believe ETs are just like us. So you go out in the public, if you're walking down the street at night, you got 100% of the people there, but you got maybe 5 or slightly 10% you don't want to meet again, you don't want to connect with. Then you got another maybe 15 or 20, which are okay, like you, okay, but not the most fantastic people. Then you got the rest. But it's really the same consciousness, we believe, in the local universe as we have on this planet. So, it's not that bad.
So overall, what can we do? The keys of Enoch give us the recipe. Yeah. The keys of Enoch tell us where the landings have taken place and will be taking place. The keys of Enoch.
Landings.
Okay. Landings. Yeah. The keys of Enoch are the only book that mentioned the year 2004 for the vehicles coming out of the ocean. The keys of Enoch are the only book that mentions the pyramids on Mars, where there was once a planetary atmosphere like our planet.
And this is all information in the keys of Enoch that you received in your experience.
In my experience, which I then have validated through my work with remote viewing, remote sensing, such as the pyramids on Mars that Desiree is showing you, on an official document I was allowed to put into my book. So from A to Z, there's another picture of it. From A to Z, we're suddenly realizing that there was cosmic civilization here that could fly between the planets. This is mentioned in the ancient Egyptian text, even in the Christian Bible, in the ancient Hebrew Bible, book of Ezekiel.
And the Sanskrit, the Vimanas.
The Sanskrit, Tibetan. So all of our ancestors recognize what we're beginning to recognize, that we're not alone in the universe. The universe is biologically diverse and friendly to evolution. And finally, there's the divine consciousness within each of us that make us, as shall we say, hope to go into outer space, to search for new realities and new civilizations, and to co-manage creation as it flows through us.
But not to boldly go where no man has gone before, because we believe we're up there already.
Yeah. Yeah. What, JJ, what was your experience? What brought on your experience? Was it a near-death experience, a meditation, a plant medicine journey, spontaneous? What?
I was a young professor, and I was teaching classes dealing with Eastern philosophy, the Sanskrit, the Bhagavad Gita, the Eastern teachings, as well as the Near Eastern Egyptian ancient Hebrew texts. And I came across references to angels and to beings of light and to masters of light. And I said, well, this is beyond the curve of traditional science. I mean, obviously, there was a part of human creation that intersected with something far more advanced, which is put in metaphor or poetry to exhibit the aspects of travel beyond space and time as we know it, and also to use powers of mind over matter to move objects, etc. So I began to study the ancient text and to realize it was not the study of words, but vibrations behind the words. And when I began to engross in my studies, in my musicology, these words, I opened at one point of my meditation a morphogenic door, which is a vibratory field that opened where a being of light stepped forward. And I was initiated, so to speak, in the realization that this is a schoolhouse. We're down here in this incarnation, this short life we have here to learn as much as we can and to move on, hopefully in service to humanity and the divine source. But essentially that brought me into a higher state of awareness. And from that, I was greeted by people in the intelligence community who wanted me to work with certain abilities that I had. And I said, I can't do that because I'm a teacher, educator, and religious philosopher. I believe that teachings should go to the world, should not go to one particular branch of humanity. And so our Desiree and I's theme has been to bring about a preparation for a positive future, that there is a future. We must be courageous enough to go through fear, through violence, through negativity, and we can do this by thinking positive at all times.
Right. And so we work also with the quantum consciousness field. We've worked with remote viewing and actually have a whole book with our colleague Elizabeth Rauscher on remote viewing and how important that is, because what it means is that our brain is in touch with a global consciousness, and we feel not only a global consciousness but a universal mind. And so that's all part and parcel of who we are.
So Brian, you've heard of the X-Files.
Yes.
The X-Files, well, this is the real X-Files. This is the book. Mind Dynamics in Space and Time. Look how thick this is. This is full of the special experiments that were done at Stanford Research Institute, right next to Stanford University in California back in the 1970s and 80s.
But it's also about quantum physics, and that's an important thing because you can't really start talking about it unless you really understand it. So a lot of this is science. There's another book Dr. Hurtak did with Russell Targ, also from SRI, called End of Suffering, which is a much easier book to read, and talks about how we can take our mind and be anywhere we want to be. In fact, Ingo Swann remote viewed Jupiter, and he reported that there were rings around Jupiter. He did this in 1973, and he wrote down everything. It was kind of, everyone knew
even
about
before
it.
NASA got there, he saw the details.
And NASA confirmed that in 1979.
So Desiree, we're going too fast. But we're showing this as an illustration of how when one becomes excited with new knowledge, how the mind speeds up. And you can imagine by going into higher musical frequencies, how you can balance, you can slow down. So we're telling our audience right now, we're thrilled to be on your program. We're thrilled to take part in all of these other areas of knowledge and science, but you have to bring it all together. And that comes into service to help humanity evolve, because we're at a critical stage of seeing our environment destroyed, of seeing biospheric collapse possibly on the horizon if the sun gets warmer. And all of this is really tragic for people we know at the United Nations and major universities. They see the end game, that we cannot go on for more than 30 to 50 years.
But that's exactly why we think also extraterrestrial levels of intelligence are making themselves more known. They've been around for thousands of years.
And that's why we're here. We're here to broadcast a segment of a much larger story, that we're not alone. We're really being prepared to join a cosmic family of nations.
So if I can quickly say, I mean, we talked about that we believe there's entities, and we've even witnessed them, of energy beings and energy light, but there's also the extraterrestrial. And so who are the extraterrestrials? That's a question we get all the time. Well, we believe there's many forms. In fact, we're doing a book that's going to be showing numerous forms of extraterrestrial intelligence, and some of which are looking like us, which is really the odd thing. You can understand a reptilian form or an insectoid or a gray type, but how do you get beings that we would say are Adamic humanity up in space? Well, we feel, we've actually been able to, and our genetic code has been out there in space and other places. And you have the tall whites, and you have all different forms of intelligence that are available. And that's one of the reasons why the government hasn't released information, is because it's so complex. It's not like one guy who came to visit, the White House and talked to the generals and said, we'll give you technology if you stop misusing your own technology and stop the nuclear weapons. No, there's many different forms of intelligence. In fact, there's a book out that Dr. Hurtak and the Keys of Enoch are mentioned in, called Extraterrestrial Species Almanac by Greg Campobasso, and that's now being made into a film that we're going to be part of, and they're going to show the different types of intelligence, and it has many different speakers in there talking about their own encounters.
Here's one picture from our book, Keys of Enoch, showing the concept of the Mother Earth as the biological inside, the ATP, adenosine triphosphate, as biologists refer to, and then you have the different levels of intelligence. I'm pointing to E.T., which was used by Steven Spielberg for his film. And then the concept of the divine mother or source, which is basically the mothering nature of life.
And we believe they use the same DNA codes, RNA codes. They just switch the arrangements. I mean, you're going to find carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen throughout the universe. So it's really how the DNA works. But you just change the code and change our codes, you get a pig.
Right.
You know, so
Right. Have you had any sort of experience, physical experience with what you believe to be an extraterrestrial?
Yeah, definitely. I have had contact in South America on several occasions, and probably you should know through Ellen's book, Making Contact, that I had the opportunity to work with Brazilian authorities who showed me not only pictures, but I was with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the famous astronomer from Harvard Northwestern University back in the 1980s in Brazil. And on a farm, briefly, an extraterrestrial being manifested.
Oh, wow.
But we've also seen light ships, and I grew up in Florida, so I saw a ship even before.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have seen the situation, but the question is, how does this relate to physical reality? How does this relate to Joe Sixpack in the street who has to watch television and has to watch his children in a merry-go-round circus, and then suddenly realize, wait a minute, the circus doesn't stop with Mother Earth, but continues into the universe. So all of this comes down to a positive psychology that people need so they're not scared. People need to realize that we are given so much of our mind that we don't use, so much of our love of our heart that we don't use, so much of our spiritual capacity to see unity on higher levels that we don't use. We have to change what we call the mechanisms of life and be prepared for a great quantum change.
But we think that there's an inner essence that people realize, and that's why 8 billion people, more or less, are now here on this planet, because we do believe in the near years that we will meet our cosmic cousins face to face. We'll be a cosmic humanity at that point, and being able to travel to the stars, or at least understand the technology and work closer and closer with these levels of intelligence. And probably a few have already gone there already.
The bottom line, smell the cosmic coffee.
You're a cosmic cowboy indeed. So you guys wrote a book together called Overself Awakening. I've never heard the term overself. You hear higher self or oversoul. Can you explain what that is?
Right. Well, that's pretty much the same as overself or higher self. But, you know, it's a unique term, of course, because we feel instead of reincarnation, right? People talk about reincarnation like, okay, I lived, you know, in Egypt, and then I waited, and then I came back here, and then I waited, and I came back here. We believe that really you have a higher self that's evolving as well. And that higher self then places you into your incarnation where you best can be. I mentioned 8 billion people have come here now. That's not just because they've all kind of jumped at the same time. It's because they want to be here. There's a higher, really reality, a higher understanding that this is the time to be on this planet for the great changes that are coming. So it's that higher self which really knows more. And in fact, it's a little bit like when Edgar Mitchell went into space and came back, he had this overview effect. That's what he called it, actually, when he came back and looked at Earth coming down. He had this greater view. And what's really interesting is that overself has that ability, like your friend, maybe with the whale. I wonder who she got that information from. Was it her higher self, her guides? There's different aspects, but they know past, present, and somewhat the future. So if you listen to that, you actually have more information than you would with your emotional body or your intellectual, rational mind. So the overself is really that which can give you greater insights into why you're here, what you need to do on a moment by moment basis.
No, you've seen the movie Avatar, and I'll ask my assistant here to bring the book Overself Awakening. And this book is illustrated in 72 chapters. Each chapter takes us into the experience of what it is to be an avatar. That is, they have the ability to go out of your body to a higher level of cosmic awareness. This book is important because really it's explaining really the higher consciousness that it does exist, as Stanford Research Institute scientists did prove that exist in their studies of multidimensionality. When we think of the higher self, it's just not just a word, it's an aura, it's a light force that the ancients in India, China, and Israel, and Egypt showed in terms of the golden aura around the head.
So here first is the cover, and then I'll open the book.
The 7 different levels of color. And then we take you pictographically through the stages. Desiree can show you this. If I can have the audience see this, at the bottom is the human. The next would be the overself. This is the expansion of the etheric body through consciousness development. And then ultimately we get into the higher side of life, into the different levels of the higher cosmic creation story.
And each chapter is a greater level of augmentation. Here's one that takes us around the earth to the
where we
sacred
connect
zones.
with the sacred areas in Tibet, in India, in the Middle East. So it's our ability to see the unity of all of the great traditions of spirituality, psychology, and anthropology, centered in the dove, the symbol of birth, rebirth, and the symbol of the cosmic language.
So again, the physical being is just this lower section here starting to awaken into the higher understanding of life.
This book is very important. It's been used by educators throughout the world. It's available in many languages. But again, the importance is the sudden realization that we're going into a whole new reality. We're making contact with cosmic intelligence. Ultimately, we will become cosmic citizens. We will be able, our children, our grandchildren, with higher technology and understanding, be able to explore other planetary systems. And we're going to, shall we say, push off from the old materialistic science that denies the power of the mind.
And you know why we like remote viewing is it actually trains us to be more and more like our higher self, or even like ET. ET, sometimes when people have had contact with them, they sometimes can talk, but 90% of communication is through telepathy. And that telepathy is also connected with what we feel is remote viewing, where you actually can send and receive signals through the consciousness field that we all share. So just, you probably have gone through this because I know that's one of your favorite topics, but that we don't feel that the consciousness field is housed or located exclusively in the mind, but that it's really much more a field that we tap into and send and receive. So we have choices all the time about receiving certain types of thoughts from that greater consciousness field. We can receive all possibilities. So if you only think you have one possibility, you haven't tapped into the quantum consciousness field.
So the bliss can be harnessed through mantras or special sounds, sacred expressions. And one of the best examples of this is my colleague, Carlos Santana. Using the mantras that I gave him, he was able to go from his old musicology, which was more in counterculture and drug culture, to one of higher spirituality. Well, if you listen carefully to what he's doing now at his ripe old age of 77, he is talking about divine grace and gratitude. He is talking about the higher mind, the higher heartbeat, the higher compassion for all peoples of the planet. He is essentially doing the work of the Pied Piper, showing that we're here not to serve our egos, to get our plastic bundle and retire early in life, but to change and transform our materialistic society into one of higher vibration, purpose, and companionship.
Yeah, you know, I heard, I remember hearing a long time ago, him in an interview or something like that. This is going back like 20 years or something, where before he had that huge hit, you know, with the Matchbox 20 guy and Smooth, I think it is. He had an experience where supposedly Metatron appeared to him, Archangel Metatron, and said, "You're going to permeate the airwaves again." And
Metatron is also one of the co-authors of this book, The Keys of Enoch.
So it's actually the Keys of Enoch and Metatron,
Wow.
and that's part of the connection. We just don't bring in that because people don't understand it. But we do in the subsequent books of the Keys of Enoch.
So we have a whole situation with musicians throughout the world who really are on the front lines of taking the vibrations and transforming them into new forms of artistic harmonics that really gives a good view of what we can do, each of us in our own way, to take time to meditate, to take time to use whatever preferences we have in sacred music, to realize that we are all transducers of sound and broadcasters of wisdom, to realize you don't have to go to the university and get all these fancy degrees, that you can just take the necessary joy of life in a practical way and use it.
But just to take the Metatron one, so this is one of the pages on there. You can see it, the last line, Metatron and Enoch. This is from the Keys of Enoch. from 1973.
So people will say, why did you write such a difficult book? And I said, I didn't. Metatron wanted me to put this out so it would not be misused by people who are fanatics who want to create a new religion. No, the teaching is to bring people together from all religions and levels of science into higher coherence, into higher mutual respect, and also in the joy of recognizing that things are going to change in a most fantastic way if we behave ourselves.
Have you continued to have those sorts of experiences, multidimensionally?
Well, he has what he calls, an inductive linkage. And it's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie. If you remember, Richard Dreyfuss saw, just the spacecraft. And we talk about this in Alan's book, too, Making Contact. That's all. He didn't see any aliens or anything like that. And then when he got home, there was this constant, image. Now, that image he was doing in his living room, which was that, kind of volcano, I call it, which is really like one of the chimney rocks, the Devil's Tower, was not something that he had seen in the past. It was something being given to him in the present. And that got him going all the way, of course, to Devil's Tower to meet with everybody. So it's that kind of inductive linkage. Once you've connected, because it's a consciousness field. Once you've made that connection, then your consciousness is linked. It's entangled and it's non-local.
And Brandon, right behind where you're sitting is that very beautiful art piece on the wall, which is a multicolored geometric form.
It's funny because I have a music project that I am sort of my most intense spiritual breadcrumb story, and I have some pretty fun ones. Goes back 15 years about this project that is all about helping musicians to raise consciousness on the planet through music. And that's like the visual, it's called Industry, spelled TREE, and that's like the physical representation of it, I feel.
It's a good illustration of what I and Carlos and my wife Desiree have experienced with higher states of consciousness and music. You have the ripple effect of sounds, creating a soundscape of color. You have a sense of joy of recognizing that what we call the liquid aspect of the divine spark. You have a deeper aspect of what the ancient mystics called the cosmic Christ, the higher divine aspects of God and the human form merging together. And you have also a playful but a joyous aspect of wanting to use this time most sacred to help humanity, because again, we are on the brink of seeing a complete planetary breakdown and disaster, or planetary repair, regenesis, and reorganization according to a higher blueprint of creation.
It also looks like a vortex because it's like the energy you create up here then comes out and ripples out throughout this reality. And that's how a lot of this manifestation takes place. We even believe that seems similar to how the universe perhaps itself was created.
Well, fascinating stuff. I feel like we could talk for many, many hours. I'd love to, as we start to wind down, maybe you could share, I always love stories of synchronicity or serendipity, positive paranormal stories. And you probably already qualified by telling a few, but is there anything that comes to mind up your sleeve that it would be fun story time to share?
Well, there's many experiences that we've had, either in diving under the ocean with Japanese divers and finding evidences of what we would call lost civilization near the island of Yonaguni, that's also in the map of the Keys of Enoch, or standing really in the Hopi Reservation. We're close to that here in Sedona, and feeling the energy spark of Mother Earth, realizing that the natives know that there will be cosmic contact in this area of the Hopi backlands. But I guess the most important experience I had was when I was in Israel years ago. I was standing on top of what is called Mount Hermon. And many scholars now believe this is the Mount of Transfiguration, where Christ and Jesus and Moses and Elijah, the three of them, were transformed in a light manifestation beyond description, but something that was most profound, that changed what we would call the historic moment of the New Testament. We were there, Desiree and I, and a colleague, and light manifested as we were doing mantras in a very special way. We have actually a picture of it, but it was reminding us that we're in a time of cosmic contact once again. It will come through the sacred areas of the world, whether on the mountaintops or the deserts, in sacred places in the outbacks of Australia and the United States. We are at a most unique point of realizing that prayer, meditation, and music can all converge and work. And this is my message to all of you. Every day now counts. It's not what's going on in Washington and Capitol Hill saying, oh, these things exist, these things may not exist. No, it's the realization that we are future scientists, future citizens, future musicians who have responsibility as a citizen of the cosmos to say, hey, let's grow up and let us recognize that the adventure of life is going to change a page, and we're going to experience what the ancients experienced, a taste of honey, a taste of eternal life.
And I also like to say, if someone wants to learn remote viewing, I mean, the first thing to do is before you even look at your phone when it's ringing, figure out who's calling you. Once you do that, you start realizing you have that consciousness connection with the planet, and you can test it over and over and over again. And then you can spread that out. Elizabeth Rauscher used to remote view the food store. When I said, Elizabeth, what do you want for dinner? She'd remote view it. So it can be used to find your keys. It can also be used to connect with higher levels of intelligence.
And so Desiree and I have put together a series of books on the divine names, the names of the divine mind. And we recommend this to all of you watching this program, that if you order the Keys of Enoch or you order the sacred names of the divine Most High, that is to say the divine source, that are illustrated, this will help you in the stages of your spiritual and psychological preparation.
So again, our website is keysofenoch.org, and we also have that same on YouTube.
Wonderful.
We have a plethora of music, but we have also these sacred linguistic books on the divine names, and everyone can take time every day to use one of the divine names, such as Abba, Artumi, which is Aramaic for the divine father of creation, or using the names of the divine spirit. Here I'm showing you the picture of one of the books illustrated. We'll see that this will open your mind into the geometric, the sacred geometries, as well as the multicolor landscape that we need to use in bringing both the left and right side of the brain into unity. This has been the wonderful validation of our work with Stanford Research Institute scientists, that we are multidimensional beings reclaiming our cosmic origin, our cosmic destiny, which is to see color, sound, science, and creativity converge.
Amazing, amazing. So yeah, I mean, so much information, so much insight. For those listening, what would you say is the simple? I love the idea, by the way, of using, starting to play games, flex your muscle, if you will, by, your phone. Okay, who's messaging me? I just heard a text message or a call or whatever. I can start working the muscle that way. Is there anything else that you would share, especially for someone who's, newer on their journey of remembering, coming back with, together with the other parts of themselves that they maybe had forgotten, and that would help them on their path?
Well, we've done several prize-winning films. One's called Light Body, and one is called Merkaba. As you know, we are also film writers and producers, and these films will take you into the fifth dimension.
Because the main thing is to accept the fact that we're not alone, accept the fact that there is a global universal mind that you can tap into, not just that it's there out aside from you and separate from you. So once you start accepting that, then you start working with it, and you can work with it by seeing certain visualizations like you have with your music project behind your head, or even with certain sacred music or videos. We're going to show you, here's the light body, which takes you around and in and out. So once you start realizing this is a new reality, but it's your reality,
it takes you into a portal of ascension, and shows you how these ancient symbols and structures work in vibration. Also, our film called Merkaba is important. This is a work that came out years ago, but has gone worldwide, of showing how the sacred tetrahedron begins to unfold, and how we understand how this geometry on Earth matches the pyramids on Mars and other structures that have been found that haven't been completely understood. But through geometry, through sound, through color, we began to open up the powers of the mind and utilize more of what I will call the cosmic vibration that we have in our incarnations.
And then you say, what's next? And what's next is beings and energies, and also hopefully those who will help you, because you have to do it with a loving heart and be willing to help humanity or help the animals or help the planet.
Some of the top illustrators who work with Apple Computer and late Steve Jobs have worked with the Keys of Enoch and have worked with our videos. So again, we're working with the upper 1% of people involved with new media, new experience. Again, I'm saying this to all of you in deep love and gratitude. There is a whole side of the mind that thinks multidimensionally, thinks on many levels, but needs music and color synthesis. And this is our work. This is our educational tools. And you can have it on the internet. We have free downloads, keysofenoch.org or Keys of Enoch TV,
Keys of Enoch TV.
Keys of Enoch TV, if those want to go into our film experiences.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having us aboard as your participants
it's been wonderful.
today.
I do have one final question for you. Both can answer. One of you can answer. I'll leave it up to you, but it's my cliche closer. What is the meaning of life according to Doctors JJ and Desiree Hurtak?
I'll start and then he'll go on. The meaning of life being here now is soul evolution. We're learning to grow. We're learning to know who we are, and we're learning to make the choices that take us collectively into a greater reality.
For me, it is the finding of the divine love spark and the divine light spark that come together within us and are married in the celebration of life, in the celebration of purpose, in the celebration of wisdom. It is the sharing of the divine and the human experience. Theologians would call this the concept of the two natures, the divine and the human we see in the cosmic Christ or in the mystical vibrations of the higher self. But it's the overcoming of separation and the realization that we were all created in God's image, and we have this responsibility to continue the book we call the Scriptures of Life in a new and fantastic way, where science is on our side, music is within our heart, and the joy of the celebration of the cosmic dance is always a daily experience. So we thank you for this time of rejoicing and realizing we're all together.
Thank you both for showing up and doing what you do. Such an inspiration. And all of you out there for tuning in, your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts. Until next time, journey well.
I love you so, 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 so